So we're going to talk about habits, and this is a topic that I've really been studying a lot more this past year. It's something that, on a personal level, I've recognized my need to develop some healthier habits. And I'm going to use the term healthy not just to describe our physical health. I think that's where we naturally go, but just all areas of life, relationally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, everything you've been hearing. And I hope you see again how it's all connecting. I promise that these speakers did not compare notes, but you heard a lot about brain science, right? Which you probably heard yesterday. So hopefully that's really reinforcing the importance of that in your development. And so habits tie right into this, because everything we're talking about over this last day and a half, it's going to come down to what are your habits? And the reality is this, is that we are a product of our habits. I don't know if you know that or not. If you just think about your day, just think about everything you do in the day and that you do in the week and in the month. You're doing things a lot of times without even thinking, right? That's when you know it's a habit. When you don't even think about it and it's automatic, it's a habit. And unfortunately, we're probably doing a lot of things that are not healthy, they're not helpful to us, and they are taking us down a path that we don't want to go. And it's a path that kind of what was being shared earlier in the sessions, it contradicts what we say we actually want to be and who we want to become. So we're saying this and we're thinking this, but we're actually doing this. And it really comes down to habits. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you just talking through the importance of habits, really tie it into leadership, but you can apply this to any area of your life. It's not just about in a leadership capacity. It's just about in becoming the person that you want to become. So Mark Twain, he has some great quotes. I love Mark Twain. And he shares this quote that says, "Nothing so needs reforming as other people's habits." Not me. It's not me, right? It's those other people who need to change their habits. What's this conference about? It starts with you. It starts with me and looking at ourselves. Do other people need to change some habits? Yeah, probably, but that's for them to work out. That's not for me to be preoccupied with, because that's a lot of times we go there. I don't know if that's how you are. I'm naturally a critical person. That's something I have to work on. That's a habit I need to change. I will look at others and think of all the things they're doing wrong, saying wrong, how they're acting in Publix, and it's annoying me. This place would be so much better if there weren't people and I could just do what I need to do. I'm just thinking about all the things. So it's always other people, right? No, it's me. It's how I'm viewing them, how I'm treating them probably as an object and not seeing them as a person who might be going through something. So, yeah, this really struck me, and it is about us, and it starts with us. So let's just tie this theme back in. So this is the whole idea of it starts with you was born out of this saying that it's just kind of become a mantra for me, and I say it on every time I do on the leadership podcast that I record. At the end, I say leadership is not about you, but it starts with you. It's just a reminder that leadership, it is about others, right? It's about building teams. It's about coalescing people around a vision or something important and say, hey, we're going to go and we're going to make a difference, and we're going to deliver excellence in the work we do, and we're going to work through conflict, and we're going to build strategy. We're going to do all those things that energize us and that are essential to the success of any organization, whether it's a for-profit business, a not-for-profit business, a church, a counseling center, whatever. We got to come together, right? So leadership is about coming in and bringing people together, bringing out the best in them, unlocking their potential. It's not, it's not about us, but it starts with us. And so it's just a reminder to go back constantly to say, okay, what do I need to work on so that I can do this better. So it's not self-serving to say it starts with me. You know, we're talking about servant leadership, which is intentionally placing the needs and success of others before your own. But it's not self-serving to start with yourself. It's not serving to take time to work on yourself, to invest in yourself. You know, sometimes it can feel that way. What I'm getting at is there's a tension there. If you really believe in servant leadership, you're like, wait, I shouldn't be focused on myself right now. But again, you should if your motivation and your heart is in the right place. Going back to our earlier session yesterday about leading from within and the heart, if my heart is in the right place, if I'm doing this because I want to be better for others, then starting with me is the right place to start. And habits are the key. So how do we start with us? Let me just give you a few things just to think through and to kind of flesh this out a little more. You say, well, Jeremy, I conceptually agree with what you're saying. What does that mean to start with me? What would I do? Well, it starts when you believe that you have a purpose, and you've heard that mentioned a few times. When you know that there's something you were designed to do, that you're here for a reason. You're here in this place for a reason, but you're here on this earth for a reason too, and you're here to accomplish something of significance. When you believe that, that's in your heart, and that becomes the reason you do what you do. You don't do it because you want people to see you and say how great you are. You don't do it because you want people, you know, to give you praise and adoration and accolades. Nothing wrong with those. But the reason we do it is because we have a purpose and we believe in that. And maybe you're still trying to figure that out. That's okay. That's part of the journey, is getting clarity about that. But when you believe you have a purpose, but then you know what you also do? You humbly admit that you do not have all the answers. That's sometimes hard for leaders to admit. We talked about authenticity yesterday. We have conditioned a lot of leaders to have all the answers. We've told them you need to figure it out. You're in charge. And it's not okay to show weakness. That's a conditioning we do a lot of times in our organization. So we put a lot of pressure on leaders to always have the answers and always have it all together. And I don't know about you, but I don't always have all the answers and I don't always have it all together. But sometimes it's hard to admit this, and that's where the humility comes in. It says, hey, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I need to learn more. I need to grow. I need people around me to compliment me and to help me on this journey. It starts when you recognize then that you have room for improvement. Because you don't have all the answers. You know, hey, I still need to grow. I need to come to the Servant Leadership Conference at PVA Orlando because I want to be filled up. I want to be challenged. I want to be equipped because I know that I have room for improvement. It also starts when you then commit to that personal growth and development. It's not just this event. It's not this day-and-a-half conference, and you can say, you know, I'm going to check a box. I did my personal growth and development for the month. No, it's a daily, ongoing journey. This is just a part of it, right? It's just to equip you, give you tools, maybe give you kind of that jolt, that boost, that motivation to do more of this. But personal growth and development is ongoing, constant, never-ending. And it starts when you take then consistent action to fulfill that purpose, bringing it full circle. So you're equipping yourself, you're growing, you're developing so that you can go fulfill and do what you've been called to do. And then guess what? It starts when you help others follow your example. It's not about you, but it starts with you. So we're bringing it back. Okay, this is all leading by example. So when I'm doing all of these things and now I'm helping others, that's when I'm leading. And that does not require me to occupy a position of leadership. That just requires me to go out and lead and influence. And I think that's where we get it wrong a lot of times with leadership is we discount our ability to help others and to really influence, because we look at an org chart or lack thereof and say, I'm not able to lead because I don't have this position. Well, newsflash, there are a lot of people that have the position who don't lead. And that's tough to hear. They often occupy a position, but they don't truly influence in this way, because they don't, going back to just the heart in the beginning, they don't have the right motivation. They've made this position about them, and that's where everything about them is tied up. It's in this position. What happens if the position goes away? Do you not lead anymore? No. When you're entrusted to something where you have people under you, that's a big responsibility, and all the more the reason why we need to do this well. So I just wanted to bring that full circle as we near the end of our conference, for you to really understand what we're getting at, and I think you do, but just to reinforce it, this idea of it starts with you, and this is how we do it. So habits really are the difference. They are the great equalizer, and we've talked about some great areas where you can work on some habit improvement. A lot of brain science, a lot of relational tools, empathy, EQ, stressors, recovery. I mean, all these things we've heard go back to habits. What are those habits we're forming? So I've really gone on this journey over the last probably year and a half to study habits more and study them, frankly, again, going back to me, to improve myself, because I recognize a number of areas where I need to form healthier, more productive habits. And I think if I asked you that right now, do you have some habits you'd like to change? I can't imagine that anyone would say no. We've all got something. If we really stopped and think, that's a bad habit I formed, and I would love to change that. But I just don't have the time, the energy, the bandwidth, whatever excuse you want to insert in there. We'll come up with something as to why we can't change that habit, or we'll say, yeah, I'm going to get to that. I don't know if that works for you. It never works for me. If you ever actually get to it, let me know, because I'm procrastination. I'm going to get to that. I'm great at that, and then I meant it. That's right. It's a terrible habit, and I convince myself that I'm actually going to do it. And it's weird, like when you actually convince yourself that you are, it actually makes you feel better. I don't know if you mean, like I'm thinking, I'm going to do that in a week, and I feel good about knowing that I'm going to do that in a week. Then when a week comes and I don't do it. So anyway, it's just funny how we do that to ourselves. It's all in the mind. So great book. Love this book. Atomic Habits, highly recommend. Atomic Habits by James Clear. This was the book for me that really changed a lot of things. And he has a great newsletter he sends out as well that you can subscribe to. But this book is going to provide you with some really actionable things related to habits. And he says this, he says, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And what he's saying there is that if you will commit to getting better 1% every day, just 1%, that over time, that's going to compound. Just like you would say with your savings, your investment. You can see the math where you say, hey, if I just put this amount in and it compounds, you see the long-term benefits. Same thing with our habits. Now, you could take that the wrong direction, too. If I get 1% worse every day, yeah, there's two sides. If I get 1% worse, obviously, that compounding effect could be significant in the wrong direction. So just think of that. And what he also talks about is the fact that we convince ourselves that it takes massive action to achieve massive success, and that is not true. Because see, we psych ourselves out of changing because we think, okay, that's it. I got to get in shape. That's it. Tomorrow, I'm running a marathon. Right? I mean, that's it. I'm running a marathon, and I'm just going to go, and everything's going to change. Really? do you run at all? Because if I tried to run a marathon, that would be a catastrophe. I mean, someone would have to come get me. I'd be in the middle of the road, just lying down. I can't run. I mean, running is, something, my shin splints are terrible, but, that's just an example of where we would convince ourselves we just have to do this massive thing. And he's saying, no, stop thinking like that, because now you're psyching yourself out and you're not going to do it at all. Because here's the problem that we face with habit change. For healthy habits, again, all areas, not just physical or nutrition, just healthy in general across the board, the progress is actually very slow, right? So what happens, we start making a little bit of change and a couple weeks go by and we're like, yeah, I'm not seeing any change. It's not getting better. It's not working. Yep, forget it. I tried. Check that box. Let me go find another habit to try for 2 weeks and give up on. The problem is the progress is slow. And in our society and how we are, we want it now, right? And so a bad habit, this is where it gets fun. A bad habit actually often gives us some instant gratification. Let's be honest. Think of a bad habit. And we're getting something from that probably pretty quickly. And so, although we know it's bad for us, we're getting some sort of gratification, at least in the moment, so we continue to do it. That's why it's hard to break, because the good habit that I know I should be doing, I'm just not seeing the payoff right away. And so James Clear says it's all about incremental change, incremental, small steps in the right direction, repeated daily, consistently, even though after a week, after 2 weeks, after 3, I'm maybe not seeing massive results. Do I know that the inputs are the right inputs? If you think about lagging indicators versus leading indicators, the weight loss is lagging. We don't know until we see it later. The leading indicators are the daily calories, the type of food I'm eating, how much exercise I'm getting, how much water I'm drinking. I can control those, and I know it's formulaic. So if I do these things consistently day in and day out, I will get the results that I want, but I might not see them right away. So that's what we got to drill in our mind, that it's incremental, and incremental is okay if I'm doing the right things day in and day out to get to where I want to be. And so we want to tie this into leading. It's the same thing as these incremental changes are going to take time. So leadership and habits, I want to contrast, external versus internal. The external are some of the things that I already mentioned. When we think about leadership, we look at the external things the leader does that we see, like working with their team, building a vision, resolving conflict, giving feedback, building a strategy, setting goals. Those are all great, and those are all necessary for leadership, but we often focus so much on those external things, the results you're getting for the organization, that we forget to look at the internal, and that is the condition of the leader, those internal habits that we're talking about. What is the leader doing to take care of themselves spiritually, physically, emotionally, relationally? All these areas that we don't see. They're the leader. They're inside, right? A lot of times. But we see the manifestation of them. We see the effects of those either healthy or unhealthy habits. The reality is this, and I think someone said it earlier, I can't run on empty. Whether I'm a leader or I'm just a human being, I can't run on empty. In other words, if I am fully depleted, going back to some of the sessions we've already heard, from stress, from poor physical activity, nutrition, if I'm depleted because my thought life is negative. The negative, wow, that stat about the negative thoughts, that blew my mind because I didn't know that we had that many negative thoughts every day, but it makes a lot of sense. If those are my habits, eventually I'm depleted and I'm running on empty. And I can't be good for anyone. I can't be good for my team, my spouse, my friends, for the strangers that I meet at Publix, right? I mean, I should bring my best self to strangers, right? Especially if I'm a person of faith. I shouldn't take that hat off when I'm out in the world. That's where I should be shining the most. And if I've got this depletion, then I can't give anything to them other than the worst side of me. So you can't run on empty. Don't try. I know. I've tried. And I promise you it doesn't work. And we'll get into some of the specific habits that manifest this. But there will come a point where it could be a very dire situation for you of, what's your next step? Are you going to be able to even continue to function? Are you going to end up hospitalized or something? It could be something very serious. Panic attacks, who knows? A lot of things can come from this constant depletion. You're here because you're hopefully here to refill that tank a little, right? You're getting that boost, you're getting energized, you're getting encouraged, and you're hopefully getting a lot of knowledge. But guess what? Knowledge does not equal action. Man, do I wish it did, because I have a lot of knowledge. I read, degrees are great, but, it's just knowledge. If you don't do anything with it, what was the point? Reading lots of books are great, but if I don't do anything with it, it doesn't matter. So I... That's it. Yeah. No. You know what to do. Absolutely. And so knowing a lot, and so I can know a lot, and then I can desire to do a lot, but I can actually not do a lot. I don't know if that was grammatically correct or not, but I wrote it down and it sounded cool. The reality is, right, I mean, I can just know all this, and then we have desire and say, yeah, man, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get better in these areas, and I'm going to do it. And then I just go back. I just go back. Exactly. I just go back and live life like it was. I go back to my bad habits. So knowledge does not equal action. Knowledge is great, though. Don't get me wrong. We need to be consumers of knowledge, but it's just the follow through on what we're learning. So let me give you a few unhealthy personal leadership habits. They're unhealthy habits in general, but I'm saying personal leadership because, again, I want to tie it back to you and what you or I might do that is unhealthy as it relates to ourselves. There's a whole nother list of just unhealthy leadership habits and maybe how I treat others or interact with my team. That's a separate list. Dale Carnegie says, feeling sorry for yourself and your present condition is not only a waste of energy, but the worst habit you could possibly have. Let's not feel sorry for ourselves. Let's go out and change what needs to change. So let me give you a list here of a few unhealthy habits. I'll go through these fairly quickly just to give us some context, but we've already talked about it a lot. Negative thought life. If I'm constantly filling my mind with negativity, if my self-talk is negative, like I am actually saying things to myself about myself that are negative and probably not even true, but somehow I believe that lie, that is a problem. And so much of what we're covering, when you really boil it down and we look at it, it is a battlefield of the mind. It absolutely is. And here's the problem with that. That's all in here, right? You don't get to see what's in here. I do. So if I'm keeping that all in here and I'm not doing anything about it, that's a problem. And we'll talk more what that looks like. Lack of learning. So again, knowledge. An unhealthy habit for a leader is to say, I'm good. I got an MBA. I read Good to Great. Whatever other classic business book is out there. So I'm good. When they, again, going back to you don't have all the answers. If you feel you've arrived and you don't have anything to learn, that is a very unhealthy leadership habit to form. And that comes out of probably some pride and other issues there. But lack of learning. So what are you doing? Are you reading? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you coming to conferences? Are you taking classes? Are you pursuing a degree? Are you taking an online course? I mean, the learning, we're in an age, there's no excuse to not learn. We have learning all around us at every possible, medium, and whether it's in person or online or listening, it's all there. So lack of learning. Poor stress management, we've already talked about that. You've heard a lot about that from the other speakers, and especially yesterday in Lauren's session. If I just keep it all in and I don't manage it, that's going to manifest in some very negative ways. And then here it is, isolation and detachment. So again, if my thought life is very negative and I am isolated, I have detached from people, that's a recipe for disaster for a leader. Because there are people around you, whether you have friends or peers that you can connect with, or you talk to a professional. The resources are there. The isolation and detachment is a choice we make to say, no, I'm good. I'll figure it out on my own. I'm tough. That's the pride talking again. And then that leads to what? Burnout and exhaustion. And some leaders thrive on that, strangely enough. They think, oh man, it's like this badge of honor. I put in my whatever hours this week, 60 or 70, and burning at both ends, and they're like, yeah, it's like, that's not actually a good thing, but they sometimes wear that as that badge of honor because it feels like that's what they're supposed to be doing. They got to get results. They got to be working hard. And I got to get the job done. And they sacrifice themselves in the process. Then there's pride and arrogance. That's a very, very unhealthy, poor habit that, again, that's a condition of the heart. I can't give you a recipe to fix that as far as like, hey, go here and listen to this or do this. That's about your heart and the condition of your heart. But it's something you've got to do the hard work on to say, do I have pride or arrogance in areas where I know that's affecting relationships, that is causing me to not want to learn, that's causing me to isolate because I think I can figure it all out and deal with it myself. And then cynicism. At some point, all this comes to us, just this place of cynicism where we just have a really, really negative view of the people and the world around us. And that can lead to a lot of other things that are very unhealthy. But it's a very dangerous place to be. There's a great book that I've read that talks about a lot of this by Carey Nieuwhof. It's called Didn't See It Coming. And he talks about many of these. Read that one? Yeah, great book. Highly recommend Carey Nieuwhof. Didn't See It Coming, and he really just tells his story about dealing with many of these things very, very transparently. So those are some to avoid. We could think of many more, but those right there really jump out at me as ones that we've got to be on the lookout for. Well, then let's talk about some healthy habits, right? Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. It is a habit that we repeat and repeat and repeat. It's just not something we do once. So, let me give you a few healthy habits. Again, personal leadership, things you and I can do. We can take some time for solitude, for reflection. You've done some exercises, some things to help you think through that. and just what that looks like, and getting away from the grind, getting away from the whirlwind, getting away from the demands of life and the stressors around us, and taking some time. Of course, again, reading, learning, filling your mind with positive, encouraging content, whether it's the Servant Leadership Conference, whether it's a great sermon you're listening to, a podcast, reading a book, whatever your preferred mode is. One thing I started to do when I was looking at my habits and saying, okay, what does my day look like? Where do I have time? Because that's the excuse, right? I don't have time. But if we inventoried our day, we can find the time. You know, we can if we look at how we're using that time. And that's part of the whole habit process, is literally just inventorying your day and what you're doing hour by hour, minute by minute, which can seem a little cumbersome, but can be very eye-opening. So if I commute, which I do, anywhere from 35 to 50 minutes, I chuckle because it's the turnpike and you never know what you're going to get from Osceola Parkway to Beachline on any given day. But if I say 35 to 50 minutes each way, and then I add that up for the day, so I could have anywhere from, an hour to, on a worst case scenario, 2, maybe. What could I do with that time? Well, yeah, I could listen to something that's going to fill my mind. Nothing wrong with listening to your favorite songs, your favorite radio station, your talk show. Don't hear me say that. But what I found is, that was just noise in the background. Listening to talk radio. I like to listen to, dialogue and arguments. That's good. It stretches the mind a little, but really wasn't doing a whole lot for me. Actually, it's probably making me mad, And if anything, when they start talking about an issue, and I was like, oh, I'll show them. I'm going to get on Twitter, or something like that. So why do that? What could I do with my time? I could listen to a podcast. I could listen to a sermon. I could listen to an audiobook, which I've started to do because, again, I may not have the time to really sit down and read. I could download a free app from my local library called Hoopla. Just a little commercial here. I don't get anything from it. That I can download 5 free audiobooks a month. Why wouldn't I do that? So there you go, if you don't know about that. What's that?
And Libby, the other app.
Oh, there's another one, Libby. Okay, see, the resources are there. Okay, very good. So I just found these little things to say, what could I replace some of that idle time with that would fill my mind? And so reading and learning, I'm filling my mind with good stuff, coming into work, positive thoughts, getting some takeaways, getting some energy and just some helpful learning for the day. Of course, setting and pursuing goals is a healthy habit. I mean, if not, are we just existing or are we trying to accomplish things? So goals are a great thing. The problem is, again, the follow-through. So if I set goals, but I don't actually do anything about them, then I'm probably going to be frustrated with myself. And so then that was a bad habit. So you can see where that could go the wrong direction. But the act of actually setting goals is very positive because it motivates us, it inspires us to say, hey, you know what, I'm here right now, but I want to go here, and I want to accomplish these 3 things in the next 90 to 180 days. That gives you, again, that boost, that excitement, like, yeah, I'm going to go do that. That's a healthy thing. Planning and preparation is healthy. Are we just flying by the seat of our pants every day, or are we actually planning ahead? Are we preparing for what we're going to be doing, whether that's at work, whether that's for our goals, whether for this next step we're going to take, but just being in this mode of planning, preparing, looking ahead is a very healthy thing, as opposed, again, just to being totally, just, hey, let's just see what happens. No, let's plan. Not reacting to everything, that's for me. I'll be honest, I put that one in there for me. I don't know if you need that one or not, but I can react. It may not be visibly, but in here it is. So when things are happening around me, interactions that are frustrating to me, or just things that I'm observing, circumstances out of my control, I'm still reacting. And so now, what's that doing? Amygdala, stressors, and so there's a firestorm happening in this in this head, and then now I can't be engaged with the people around me. So a very healthy habit is how do I not react to everything that's happening around me? Building confidence, that is a great habit. That's on the other side of arrogance and pride. Confidence is a good thing. I want to build confidence. What's my confidence in? Well, if a person of faith, it's in God and who He's designed me to be. It's in that purpose that I have. It's in the person that I'm becoming, and building that confidence, that is a good thing. That's not arrogance. Confidence is great. So I want to build confidence, because if I don't have confidence, I'm probably going back to the negative, tying it back to the unhealthy, some negative thoughts, the negative thought life. I'm saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of that. I can't accomplish that. Who am I? No. We've got to throw all those lies out and build the confidence to enable us to move forward. And then thinking positively, again, what a great habit. John Gordon, if you know John Gordon, he writes a lot of books. The Energy Bus, I think, was one of his most famous books, but he has many. He's got one on positive leadership, positive teams. He writes a weekly newsletter on positivity, and he's like the positivity guy. So if you need some positivity, go to johngordon.com and subscribe, because he's got just great stuff it's gonna give you energy, and he's got a great podcast too. So those are some healthy habits. Again, there are many more, but that's where we want to be, right? So how do we get there? Well, let's first start here. Guess what you control? Do you know what you control? Did I hear it? You or mine? Yeah. It's good old you. That's you. So just pretend that's you. This is my friend here. He's standing in for us. So you control you. I control me in certain ways. And there are 3 key areas. And we actually have developed them as a little bit of a mantra here at the campus. You may have seen the sign out there. It's a mindset we want to cultivate, because it is about the mind. And the first thing is my attitude. I control my attitude. I do not control the circumstances, the people, the situations, but I certainly control my attitude toward those and how I react. I can control this. So we've got to remember that in any given moment, I choose my attitude here. Do I choose a negative attitude, a cynical attitude, or do I choose a positive, optimistic attitude, regardless of what's happening around me? Do I recognize that, yes, I have some habits that I need to change, but I'm not going to get down on myself and have a negative attitude towards myself. I'm going to be positive about it and believe that I can change. So I got to start with my attitude, and tying it into servant leadership. Just thinking biblically, let's just take on a servant attitude. Man, if I just said, hey, I'm going to be a servant today, I'm going to serve people, I'm not going to be self-serving, do you know how much that would change in our world and in our businesses and our churches everywhere? We just said, hey, I'm going to be a servant today. But that's a daily, again, that's not an act, that's a habit of every day saying, I know there's a lot coming at me today, but I'm going to serve. I'm going to figure out how to do that, and I'm going to have a servant attitude in spite of the circumstances and the things happening around me. I can control my effort. I can control that. If I'm going to say this is important to me and set this goal or habit that I want to pursue, well, it's up to me to put forth the effort. Whatever I do, I need to work at it with all my heart. It's working for the Lord, not for men. It's my effort. And then lastly, I control my behavior. Again, I don't control the circumstances, but I can choose to be kind. I can choose love. I can choose patience. I can choose gentleness. I can choose self-control. I can choose joy, goodness. Those might sound familiar to you as the fruit of the Spirit. Again, you can pick whatever framework you want, but those are behavioral. Love is behavior. Kindness is behavior. And I choose that. I control that. And so as we bring this full circle and how it starts with us. I need to start controlling these things and how I interact with the people around me. And that's going to help me as I try to build better habits. So let me give you just 4 steps real quick, and we're going to keep moving along here. Just a little bit of like a framework to help you to think through this. You could apply this in a variety of ways, but for the purpose of habits, we're going to talk about these 4 areas, which are self-discovery, self-evaluation, self-improvement, and self-discipline. So 4 selves, okay? First. Oh, I forgot I had cool animation. Let me animate real quick. There we go. All right. First is self-discovery. Who do I want to become? You already heard that mentioned. Who am I becoming? This is about identity. And you may say, well, I'm not right now, exactly where I want to be, who I want to be. And again, I've listed some categories as we think holistically about our habits and who we are, spiritually, physically, mentally, relationally, emotionally, and there's some others you could put in there, but that is a very holistic view of who am I becoming. So it's a question you need to spend a little time on. These questions, I want to encourage you to think through them and maybe just really take some time for each one. Self-discovery is that one where we do that in internal work. We look at our purpose and who we are and say, am I becoming the person I want to be known for in each of these areas? And if the answer is no, I believe that if you looked at your habits in each of those areas, you would have the answer as to why you're not where you want to be. Because your habits in each of those areas do not line up with who you say you want to be spiritually, physically, mentally, relationally, emotionally. So you could go each one and just evaluate. And that's what we're going to do next. And I'll walk through these fairly quickly. Is self-evaluation, and that is just to ask the question, what is my current reality in each of these areas? So what is my current reality spiritually? What is my current reality physically? What is my current reality mentally? And on and on. And current reality is this, and it's the hard one, right? And I heard it yesterday. Confront the brutal facts. That is from Good to Great. And that is just saying, this is what's going on. And that doesn't mean it's all bad. It's just, this is my reality. I'm doing well here. I'm struggling here. This is my reality. It's unfiltered, and it just is. And I need to see it. Maybe I need to write it down. Maybe I need to talk to someone who can help me answer that question. Sometimes we can't get outside of ourselves. We need someone, a trusted friend, advisor, confidant, who can just sit with you and help you answer that. Might be tough. Might be some things there that you're like, man, hard to hear that, hard to see that. But this is where change starts to happen, when I confront that reality and I say, all right, next step of self-improvement is, all right, so based on that, what needs to change? What needs to change? Now this, again, is about desire and intention. And as you'll see, there is a step 4, because if I stop at step 3, what I'll have is a list of things that need to change. That won't change if I don't do anything about them, right? And that's the whole idea of habit formation and change. And so self-discipline is the 4th step, and really, in my opinion, the most important, and that is this: what am I going to do about it? So is the pain enough in those areas that you said need to change, that you are actually going to take an idea or a plan and you're actually going to turn it into action? Again, going back to the beginning, incrementally. No, you're right, it's habits, but it's incremental. Because again, you're going to see things on there that are going to jump off the page at you, and they might discourage you from taking action because it feels too big. It's like, oh my gosh, how can I can't do that. It's too much. because you're overwhelming yourself by thinking that you have to take massive action. No, I need to take small steps consistently in the same direction. Yeah, and be okay with it, because you know you're doing the right things that'll get you to where you want to be. It might not be for a few months. It might not be for a year. That's okay. You're moving in the right direction, and you know that because you're controlling the inputs. So this is where the rubber meets the road in the self-discipline. And you know what? You might need, again, someone to walk with you in this journey. Going it alone doesn't often work, and that's where our friends come in, our advisors, our counselors, our coaches, whomever fills that role for you, but somebody to help walk with you and hold you to the A word, hold you accountable. We don't like that word. We don't like that word. You can call it whatever you want, but it's coaching you to continue doing what you said you're going to do. You said it was important, and you bring it all back to your step one and says, well, who do you want to become? Because you say this, but again, you're not moving that direction. And that's tough to hear, but it's important for us to hear. So as we wrap up, just closing thoughts. Quality habits really lead to a quality life. So poor quality habits will lead to a poor quality of life. Really good quality habits, healthy habits will lead to a quality life. And that we are a product of our habits, and it's just a fact. And we need to recognize that, and we need to remember that better habits are built one day at a time. Let's just start with incremental daily change. And why don't we start today? All right? You're here because you wanted to get better. You were drawn to this, as Shannon said, for a reason. There was a reason you were drawn to this event. And I believe, like she said, you're not here by accident. You're here for a reason. And so I want you to think right now as we get ready to close in the next session, what am I going to do with all this information? And you might feel overwhelmed there, so don't. Maybe just zero in on one area. You said, I really resonated with this. When I go home, what am I going to put down on paper that I'm going to start working on? And who's going to hold me accountable to that? Let's start today, and let's go out and build better habits and be better leaders for our coworkers, for our team, for our families, for our friends. Thank you.